Okay, so why doesn't essentialism really work? A lot of things that we want to study in science aren't necessarily essential concepts. They aren't things that can be easily broken down into their components. For example, in psychology, hypnosis. What is it? What is hypnosis? Well, an essentialist would say we can't really study it until we all come to an agreement about what the definition of hypnosis is going to be. Well, we have different camps that explains hypnosis differently. We've got some people who say it's literally an altered state of consciousness. Freud would be in this camp where he says you could enter this altered state of consciousness where now you have access to your unconscious information. And so Freud thought if he could hypnotize you, then he could gain access to your stored memories and things that you know, and things that are kind of being bottled up and causing anxiety. The problem with this theory is there's not a lot of evidence to support that people who are hypnotized are actually in a different state of consciousness. For one thing, your brainwave patterns don't necessarily enter a different type of brainwave when you're hypnotized as compared to when you're regularly awake, or if you're in alpha waves, which are when you're just like awake but relaxing and trying to fall asleep. So the altered state of consciousness interpretation, we don't see evidence of an altered state in your brain waves. Another shortcoming of this theory is that not everybody can be hypnotized. Some people can and some people can't. And every other altered state of consciousness that we know of, everybody enters it at some point. Everybody falls asleep. Everybody gets drunk when they drink too much alcohol. Everybody has these other states of consciousness. But with hypnosis, we don't necessarily have that. So how about what else could it be? Maybe you're role playing. Maybe when it's when you are playing the role of a hypnotized person and your therapist or the stage show guy is playing the role of a hypnotizer, we all just take on our role. We all do what we're supposed to do, and it's really nothing else but playing a role. Maybe it's that some people are suggestible, that people can take on the suggestion that they are hypnotized and start acting in ways that go along with that. Evidence to support this hypothesis comes from the finding that there are some kinds of people who are more hypnotizable than others. And the kinds of people who are more hypnotizable are those who have really vivid imaginations, who really get swept away when they're watching a movie or reading a book or something. They have a lot of empathy and can really take on the emotions of the actors or the characters in the book or whatever. It kind of implies that they're more suggestible. Please don't hear me saying gullible, okay? I'm saying suggestible. That means that you can take on the suggestions that are around you, whether the suggestion is that people are sad, let's cry, or the suggestion is you're hypnotized, behave in a hypnotized way. There's just greater suggestibility possibly in play. There's also a theory that hypnosis is a dissociation. I did not misspell this word. It's actually dissociation. This is where you've had a break between what you're consciously aware of and what's really going on. You may be familiar with dissociative identity disorder, right? Or other kinds of dissociations. The idea here is that you can maybe have a split between, let's say, your tooth being drilled and then your conscious awareness of the pain of having your tooth drilled. This theory does a really good job of explaining pain management, hypnosis being used for pain management. If you can break your awareness, then you won't feel the pain, you won't experience the pain. Okay, so yeah, those are all my four competing theories of hypnosis. Okay, so should we have some kind of, I don't know, boxing match or something to decide who's right? Because we've got evidence that supports each of these different theories. We've got different kinds of situations that seem to support the dissociation, other kinds of situations where role-playing seems like the best explanation. So how are we going to decide which one we're going to use as the definition in an essentialist way? Well, we really can't. We really can't. Who's going to give up their theory, right? As long as there's evidence that's supporting their theory, why would they say, okay, I concede, I give up? No. The lack of an essential definition does not mean that we can't, that the concept isn't meaningful. Just because we can't all agree. You'll notice that all the examples that I gave of the competing theories of hypnosis are accounting for part of hypnosis, but none of them are cohesively explaining all the things that go along with hypnosis. That's really common when we have competing theories. Some theories will account for some parts, other theories will account for other parts, and as long as none of them are accounting for all parts, the theories all remain viable. The concept's still a valid concept to study, right? You all heard of hypnosis, right? We should study it. We are curious about it. We may not all agree on what it is psychologically, but we're all interested in it. We all want to know whether there is a theory that would account for it across all the different types of things that happen under hypnosis. So the lack of an essential definition does not mean that it's not a meaningful concept. But we can move forward, thankfully, in science, even if we haven't agreed to a definition, by following a different philosophical principle, which is operationism. If we're going to study something scientifically, what we have to do is define our concepts as a function of the observations and the measurements that we can make on those concepts. So we define the concept through observable and measurable things, measures. And then also whatever we've decided we're going to use as our observations and our measurements, other people should be able to verify using their own observations and their own measurements so that it's out in the world. It's not something just in my head. I know I keep picking on poor Freud, but I mean, one of the things that where he went wrong scientifically as far as operationism is concerned is that a lot of the things that he talked about were not observable by anyone else. They were all inside his head and his knowledge and his, special insight into how the human psyche works. He didn't assert things that other people could test and verify on their own. Have you ever noticed that when people see UFOs, there's hardly ever anybody else around to verify it? I saw a UFO once. Probably more than once. I've seen things that I couldn't figure out what they were. Of course, I think I've already told you guys my sea otter story, so you should already be a little bit guarded about my having quote-unquote seen something. But one of the great things about my sighting is that I wasn't alone. And so when I saw something in the sky, it was daytime, and what I was seeing was, this was down in New Mexico, and what I was seeing was the big white puffy clouds and then the blue sky that we had in Albuquerque. It was so pretty down there. And then in between these two big white puffy clouds was what was clearly a, what's the word I want to look for? Like a sphere. Yeah, that's the word I want. Sphere that was white, it looked like. And what was interesting is that the clouds were blowing past it and it seemed to be staying stationary. So I said to the people with me, hey, do you see that white thing up there between the clouds? And first they were saying no. And then once they finally honed in on where I was pointing, then they started to say yes, they saw it. And then thanks to other people, we all used our logic and came to the conclusion it probably was not space people, but it was probably more like a weather balloon. That would be spherical, possibly. It could be a satellite. We have a lot of satellites that circle the Earth. Maybe there was one that was close enough that it was reflecting enough sunlight during the daytime that I could see it, and it was a stationary one. We were right next to Kirtland Air Force Base, Sandia National Labs, all sorts of military things. Maybe it was some kind of positioning thing. The point is, having other people there suddenly made it less likely to be magical UFO kind of interpretation, and more likely with other people observing it and drawing different conclusions based on the data they were collecting. We came to the conclusion it was probably not a UFO. Another thing that's interesting is dreams. That's another one of those things where they're fun, they're interesting, we want to talk about them, we want to find out if they mean something, but nobody else can directly observe your dreams. We have to rely entirely on your retelling of your dream. And of course, your retelling may not be wholeheartedly 100% valid, because I don't know about you, but whenever I'm telling a dream, I sort of embellish a little bit, draw inferences that were not present at the time I was making the dream. And then also, I don't even know if you're reporting an actual dream. When I'm telling you my dream, you don't know if I'm even telling you a dream. I might be telling you something I read in a book and I'm just pretending like I dreamed it. You have no way of knowing. There's no way to directly observe it yourself and verify by yourself. Operationism demands that we need to define our concepts through how we're going to observe and measure the concepts, and then in ways that allow other people to verify those measurements and those observations. All right, let's go ahead and take a little break, and we'll come back in the next segment and talk about an example of how operationism can be applied.